Welcome to WebRTC Live. In WebRTC Live, we cover the latest technical topics and business use cases for WebRTC and live video. As always, this episode is brought to you by WebRTC.Ventures, leading integrators of WebRTC video into your custom application.
Welcome back to WebRTC Live. I'm your host, Aaron Syme, founder and CEO of WebRTC.Ventures. WebRTC.Ventures is a custom design and development agency focused on building live video applications, and we're here to help you take your application live. You can learn more about us at WebRTC.Ventures. Thanks for joining us live today on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitch. And welcome also to any of you watching a replay of today's event. For those of you with us live, you can ask questions throughout the stream by leaving a comment in whichever platform you're viewing this. For today's episode, I'm joined by two guests from Webio, which is a conversational AI orchestration company. They use conversational AI, machine learning, and natural language understanding to understand customer intent and blend chatbots and live agent conversation. My guests are Paul Sweeney, co-founder and head of product, and Ben Waymark, CTO. Thanks for joining me today, Paul and Ben.
Thank you, Aaron. Nice to be here.
Well, it's great to have you. Why don't we start with, you can tell us a little bit more about Webio and give us a little definition of conversational chat or conversational AI.
I'll take that then. We started Webio a couple of years back, around 2016, 17, around that time frame, because we saw that there was this big movement to customer interaction over messengers. And so at that time, it really was the movement from SMS to WhatsApp. There was a couple of companies across Europe and telcos seeing a big migration of traffic from SMS to messengers. And it was apparent to us at that time that if that behavior shift was happening, pretty soon companies would need to be able to provide customer service over messengers. I think we were a bit early, but we've been around the block a couple of times as founders, so we knew that SMS was still a rock solid kind of interaction channel, and a whole bunch of companies hadn't really used that for two-way conversations. So we thought about conversational commerce as starting with SMS, moving to messengers, moving to chat, moving to voice. So it had this journey kind of built into it. And so we started out providing conversations over SMS, two-way SMS, and then over messengers, and then over all types of messengers and messaging. So our journey was kind of technically had that kind of a path to it, and we weren't really subject to the whims of like, well, does this kind of technology take off, or does that kind of technology take off? We kind of knew that there was going to be some business in those channels anyway, and we quickly focused in on the areas that were getting maximum value from that kind of focus, from that kind of messaging focus, from responding to SMSs and responding to WhatsApps. And that was in the area of credit collections messaging. So there's a whole bunch of people, when they're getting into trouble with debt, they just kind of bury their head. There's too many things going on. It's very stressful. And when you take those conversations and you put them into a channel like SMS, it really de-stresses the whole conversation. It makes it kind of atemporal, like you can send a message, wait a while, respond to that message, wait a while. And it's a lot less kind of emotional, and you get time to kind of think about how you want to respond. And so we found just really amazing response rates to these SMSs, particularly in the late stages of a debt conversation, really help people re-engage. And so that gave us our initial beachhead. And from there, we've progressed into basically helping you run the entire credit conversation, from how you are maybe helping people to take out a loan, or people rescheduling a loan, or rescheduling payments on a loan. So there's a whole kind of cycle now that we manage through the whole conversational technology and the digital in front of that.
Interesting. Coincidentally, by the way, just before we started this, I got a text message about a business credit card we recently applied for that it was just approved. So Evidence right there of this. On the other end, not collecting the debt yet, but ready to incur. But it's interesting. It's a very it can be very multimodal, but I hadn't thought about the emotional difference between a voice conversation and an asynchronous messaging conversation in that context. That's interesting.
It is quite interesting. What's really interesting is there's a pattern that's seen all over, which is when people get out of control on their debts, the first thing they do is they stop looking at their bank accounts, they stop looking at their credit cards, and they basically just stop engaging.
Right.
And then to have an actual phone or physical conversation with someone is really difficult at that point, because you're trying not to engage. Where if they know that it's coming through an automated system, it can actually be a lot more calming, because for whatever reason, culturally, with debt always comes a feeling of shame.
Mm-hmm.
And really what we're trying to do is we're trying to de-stress and de-shame that situation. And this is particularly true with some of our clients. In fact, a lot of our clients are it's debt collection, but it's not that it's sort of a bit from what you think of old school debt collection. It's debt collection from consumer products that are using debt as a way of enabling people to buy things that they otherwise wouldn't be able to afford. So it might be getting a mobile phone, it might be that type of thing. So what you're trying to do there is to get a really good customer experience, because you're not just trying to sort of collect money at all costs. What you're trying to do is to have an ongoing relationship with someone that includes credit, but also includes credit in a positive way that helps them to be able to manage, basically to manage their finances.
So talk a little bit more about the conversational AI aspect of that. So these interactions are not with a human, a live agent in most cases, correct? How does that work?
Well, if I take the example, I'm just going to assume nobody knows anything about conversational tech. And so natural language understanding, natural language processing, natural language programming, there are all these terms around basically how do you understand how people speak normally. If I'm texting back and forth with my family, I'll use a certain kind of rhythm and cadence and abbreviations and words and tone. And I tend to actually not vary that too much from company to from person to person to company, because the channel itself is a kind of informal channel. Mm-hmm. And if I'm speaking to someone and I'm Irish, I can go around the point a little bit and maybe embellish a little point and then come back again and then come around the back, and eventually I'll answer your question. And it might have taken me, 5 minutes. And I've tried to make you laugh along the way, and I've tried to learn something about you along the way and find out who you're related to. But then I tell you, yeah, that house is down the road, turn left, right? That's because you were just looking for instructions of how to get somewhere. But it goes to the heart of what conversational interaction is. It's conversational. So it's not always 1, 2, 3, tic-tac-toe. It's pretty much about listening to someone, and they're telling you all the bits of information, like, hey, who are you looking for? Where do they live? How do I get there? Can I drive up that road? I'm listening to all these instructions, and then you're picking them out of the conversation and going, well, this conversation is about a delivery. So I'm going to need an address. I'm going to need a name. I'm going to need maybe a telephone number so I can ring the house if I'm late. So I can be telling you, oh yeah, and then I'm going up here and going there. But as long as I pick out those 3 pieces of information, I can kind of seal off that little bit of the conversation and go, okay, I have everything I need now to progress to the next part of the conversation, which is maybe to confirm that the time that they're going to be there at or something like that. Mm-hmm. We're going to be like 30 minutes away. Is that okay? You go, yep. So they've confirmed the time, which was the next part of my process. And then you might say, is there anything I should know? Like, as this is our first time delivery to you, is there anything we should know to make this delivery to you? They go, yeah, I'm on the 3rd floor, or I live in a treehouse, or wherever it is, right? There could be some unusual information. So I tell you that unusual piece of information, and then I've got to parse that and find out if there's something in that, like barking dog or dangerous dog or something like that. So I might go, actually, yeah, I know where I'm going. I know when to arrive there. But I got this one other little piece of data now, which is they've got a dog and it's dangerous and I shouldn't go into the place. I'm actually just going to tell them I'm going to leave it outside the gate and not deliver it to the house itself. So what that brings up is that conversational interaction is very, it's unstructured itself. It's not like tic-tac-toe, sequential. It kind of can go around the houses a little bit. And also the data that's involved in that conversation can be fairly unstructured data, because I'm telling you things that you haven't expected to hear or get back from a customer. So it's very good for making people feel that they're interacting, that they're feeling good about it. Like you were saying at the beginning, that sometimes you wouldn't have expected SMS to be a great way to interact with people when they're in late debt, and it turns out it's a really good way, because the emotional component of it is, I can't really write a lot. You're not expecting me to give huge responses, but I can give you short, meaningful ones. Like, I can't pay this because I have big school bills due, or I have a big medical bill, or I'm in hospital right now anyway. So you're getting really short answers, but this technology is really good at figuring out really short answers. It's saying, actually, they're saying, I can't pay. Okay, that's intention. They can't pay. And they're saying, because I'm in hospital. So, whoa, a second. If someone's in hospital, that means they could have something else wrong with them. I should be maybe probing a little bit more about that. Well, okay, what's the next question? Okay, sorry to hear that. Why are you in hospital? So, oh, I work in a hospital, or my daughter is sick, or I got injured. And then you can take that conversation and go, okay, this is marked now in some way for being a vulnerable situation. You don't want to be pressuring someone to pay because they've communicated to you that there's something else that you should be probing about and something else you should know more about. And that's exactly the kind of conversation you want a human agent to take over and start asking smart questions about. Now, you can give that agent some really good, potential questions to ask, but it still should be asked by a person, because that person should understand that you're human to human. You have to understand the common humanity of people.
So if I could
go ahead, Ben.
I was going to say, if I could interject here as well, that I think a big place where this because automated conversation in some ways has existed for a long time. We know there's IVR, there's press 1 for this, 2 for that. I think it was like early 70s, somebody came out with Eliza, which was it was sort of a joke psychoanalyst bot, where it just keeps asking everything you say. It just asks how you feel. And these things have existed, and they've existed for a while, but they've never been very good. And what's really changed in the last sort of decade or so is with the ability to use machine learning and some of the principles around machine learning, and how you collect data, how you collect this bit of information, how you tag things, like in that example that Paul was giving with the vulnerable conversation, is what happens is you're able to basically collect the data and then make decisions on that data through the pattern recognition. And that's what makes this sort of so much more powerful. So in an old school sort of messaging system, you might send a text message, say, can you make a payment? And then if they say, no, I'm in the hospital, it will just be programmed to say, okay, I see the word no. And my next response is, well, you should. Where now what we can do is we can collect the information and say, okay, actually, you've said no, you've identified that you've got a medical vulnerability. There's, like in the UK specifically, and I know other places, but we have a lot of clients in the UK around this. There's very specific procedures that you need to follow when somebody is identified as vulnerable. So by being able to pick up on this information means that for the customer, they're able to do the right thing anyways, which is to look at the vulnerability and come up with an appropriate response. And also to be able to show from a regulatory point of view, to be able to show that they are following the right procedures, that they are actually doing the right thing that's in the best interest of the person who's late on the payment.
Interesting. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about that handoff between the conversational AI and the live agent, the human agent. How does that work, and how do you decide when to do that handoff?
So that's it's going to be a more and more interesting question, actually, as time goes on in the next 2023. There are some people who really want conversations to be automated as much as possible. So if you could have a customer sign up, get approval on a product or approval on a loan to buy a product, and then complete that and get the product delivered to them, and all that's automated, that's great because it lowers your cost of service. And so the value, if the customer gets, let's say, stuck in a part of that process, or it looks confused around the form, or is unnecessarily delayed in part of that journey, you can just, offer to connect to a customer. You can actually automatically connect to an agent, or offer to connect to an agent, but the trigger is still some aspect of a delay in the journey, right? They're just taking too long at that point, and therefore you're not going to get success in your completion. So the kind of goal is to not have an agent conversation, because you want that to happen as smoothly as possible.
Actually, I'm going to correct you there, Paul.
Sure.
The goal is to not have an unnecessary agent conversation. Because as with the vulnerability, and there's a few other things where actually having that agent conversation might be the right thing to do. If it's an edge case, if it's something that you haven't thought of. But what you don't want to do, because it's not good for the person, it's not good for the agent, is have the agent having to answer the same questions over and over again, or people having to wait for an answer that they could have gotten a lot more quickly. Sorry, Paul. Try not.
No, so the second part of that is so the dominant kind of logic in the first example is you don't want to have an agent transfer, but you need to have one there. So if people fall out of their digital process, you can capture them and service them back into the digital journey. But the second view is there are times where you actually want people to have a conversation with an agent. That's actually success. And so you might say, look, if they fill out the form and the following characteristics are met, I want you to put them to an agent because they're qualified. They're people you want to have conversations with, or the agent would have had to do that job anyway in information gathering before you spoke to them. So you might as well get that information captured up front and then hand over to an agent. So you're kind of semi-automating the agent's job for them. So the trick of it is, I think, to think about it as a capability that's kind of appropriate to various conversations at various times. It's not that one is right and one is wrong. And so there's this metric out there that the industry would broadly use, which is called, I think, containment. So how successful is our automation at containing the customer conversation? But of course, that doesn't give you any sense of how successful the conversation was, or whether containing the conversation was the right thing to do.
Right.
So it's and you'll still see a lot of people like following that metric, like just as success, like this is success, containment. So our view on this is that there's a kind of fluidity between automated conversations and people, and that it's just putting people in at the appropriate time and giving them the right information, and then taking that information and handing it back to the conversation. So the concept is, it's one conversation. Some of it is handled by bots, some of it's handled by people, then it could be handled by an intelligent assistant again, and then handled by a person again, and it's just handed back and forth as appropriate.
Interesting. Yeah. So one thing that I've heard people say is that there's maybe conversational AI is fizzling out a little bit, and I think the reference point I've heard given for that is like layoffs in the Amazon Alexa team and sort of the use of Alexa devices and that form of conversational AI. Everything you've talked about, though, is very enterprise related, essentially very business, B2C related. Tell me a little bit more about what you see in the space in general, and what if you see differences between that sort of consumer and business side of conversational AI.
I'll take this one, Ben. I think there's two bits to this. So we've always had one view on this, right? So our view on this is that it's not about the device that's sitting on your desktop, right, to hear what you're saying. That's not the point. That was a delivery mechanism for an intelligent assistant. That's where it lives. That's the genie in the plastic box. That genie can live anywhere. It can live in your website. It can live in your mobile app. It can live in your lights and your wherever, right? It's all about the intelligent assistant. That was just one of the housings. That was one of the form factors for it. So that's the first thing. The second thing is what it did show, which was a huge transformation of mindset, is if you think about it just as pure market signal, people want to talk to things. How good they are is another thing, right? But they want to. And that's really interesting. Whether we did it well or not is a separate issue. But the adoption of this technology was probably the fastest adoption of kind of any technology, consumer technology in, I don't know, 50, 100 years. When you look at the adoption curves, they're just like straight up. I think like 40% of the US has one of these devices. Now, they're not super happy with it, but they absolutely indicated that this is something that they want to do. So I think it's a problem that's going to get solved. I think there's some real technical problems as to why it didn't get solved the way it has. The way it's evolved to date. But I think it will. Now, whether that happens on a branded device that sits on your desktop or it happens in your browser or on your mobile app, that's another conversation. That's a matter of how this gets wrapped. They've been quite successful in different environments. Now, it does lead us, though, to where has it been? Like, if people aren't interacting on the device in their desktop to speak to a service, like I want to contact the airlines to book a ticket, okay, that form factor just didn't work, right? But you probably would click on an icon on your website or call them. And if you were dealt with a conversationally driven system where you could say, hey, this is Paul, I'd like to change my flight. I wanted to go to Chicago and I'm booked, but I need to change it because my brother is sick and oh God, I got bags too. Yeah, and I need to change the bags and around the houses again, right? The system picks it all up, looks up permissions and goes, hey, Paul, no worries. There's a plane following the next day. We can book you on that. Your bags will automatically be retagged. Is that okay with you? And I go, oh, fantastic. Thanks. Oh, can you send me an email to confirm? Thanks a million. And if you got that done, you'd go, oh, that was very convenient, very easy. I liked using that. And I think that the way to think about it is it will be hugely transformative for all communications infrastructure. Like, it's just going to change everything around communications infrastructure.
It's
and all that's.
I was going to say it's also worth mentioning that it was looking really bleak with what's going on with Alexa, with layoffs and all this. Then, of course, as well, ChatGPT has come out. That took, I mean, I think it was a 2 weeks after ChatGPT came out, where an anonymous university-age child that I know, and I won't say who, was asking for some help on an assignment, and is like, well, did you ask ChatGPT? And they were a bit completely blown away. And then 3 days after that, tools were coming out on how to detect students that are using ChatGPT to cheat on their assignments. And I mean, that has just been huge, and it has shown that there's things like the Alexa that's a bit there's things like Android Auto, which I was actually blown away when I first tried it, just going in and saying, where's the supermarket, and it tells you. And then the frustration becomes, as soon as you get used to it, you want Star Trek Land. I remember like legitimately being annoyed at my Android Auto because it couldn't settle an argument we were having about what currency they use in Bolivia. Just because we're having that argument, and it feels like you should reasonably be able to ask your car what the currency is Bolivia, and it can't tell you. And that's sort of the disappointment. But then you look at Chat, it's a Bolivar. You look at GPT, and you realize that like there's so much in there. Like people are going in and we've already had, in fact, quite soon after it came out, one of our engineers said, "Oh yeah, I was trying to figure out how to deploy something specifically on AWS with Docker images. The instructions that AWS weren't kind of doing it for him, so he asked ChatGPT and actually got better instructions."
Yeah. So we're going to get, I definitely want to talk more about ChatGPT and also video and conversational AI. Before we get there, though, I want to go back to something you referenced too, Paul, which is airlines, customer service around airlines. And so there's also some interesting headlines in 2022 around like Frontier Airlines, I believe it was, making an announcement they're going to eliminate all call-based customer service and encourage/force their customers to only do self-serve through the app, which I would presume means an increase in the use of conversational AI in those apps. It's probably still conversational chat driven. What do you see the impact there?
So I think it'll get so far, and then I think that what you'll find is that even though like we're interacting with a company and a company is like an entity, we kind of always want someone in that company to take responsibility and to acknowledge our problem. Right. And so as humans, we kind of socially contract with one another. And like, I'm just going to feel different if there's someone in customer service called Mary and she says, look, Paul, I understand that you're stuck in the airport. We're looking at all the hotels. Right. We're just fully booked. I'm doing everything I can. And I go, they own my problem. That person is taking care of it for me. I kind of feel like I'm being looked after. So I think that there's always going to be a rule. I think people underestimate the psychological contract we have as like human beings with one another in customer service, that we're going to help each other out. So I think ultimately the golden rule here has always been in design, automate, but have people under it, right? So if you need to drop out or you need help, you can get it, and it's a person. And then you feel, okay, look, if I get stuck here, someone's going to help me. But if you definitely don't have a person there, and you don't have a person there, you feel abandoned and you feel like you're not being supported. So I think per your earlier comment about people and humans in the loop, I think it's an essential part of feeling like you have a relationship with a company and they're looking after your concerns.
There's always going to be an edge case that you can't answer. But if you could find out from a robot what gate you're at quickly by saying, what gate's my flight? And it can recognize who you are and just say it's gate 6 and your flight leaves in 5 minutes and I could see where you are, you better run. That's going to be helpful.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I want to encourage those of you watching us live, you can ask a question on LinkedIn, YouTube, or Twitch in the stream. We have a question from Jose, who wants to know how different, complicated is it to implement conversational AI in multiple languages, not just English only. And I'll take it even a step beyond that and say like localization of, within a given language like English, perhaps.
Do you want me to take this, Paul? Because I've done a bit on this. Cool. So it's actually quite interesting. There's a couple of ways of doing it. There's a really simple way of doing the multiple languages where you just have wherever you're sort of engaging, you just match it to the language that you're in. So if you have a web chat or if you have a number that you call or send a text in or whatever, you use those different languages. But also you can actually do some really cool language detection, different types of language detection. And depending on how you want to do it and how you want to scale it and other things, you can actually even be able to switch languages within a conversation, because that's something that happens. And particularly, and I worked in the airline, sort of some of the airline use cases before Webio, and it becomes quite a thing because people will often start in one language, and then sometimes find that actually they can't communicate anymore in that language and then want to switch to another language. And you can do language detection that will switch the languages based on that. And the translation that you can do now is actually incredible. Like some of the automated translation tools have gone well beyond the old sort of Google Translate that we might remember from a few years ago, to actually I've actually had a full multi-day negotiation over a software project between English and Mandarin, well, Chinese, simplified Chinese, over WeChat, using entirely automated translation, without any hiccups happening. So by the time it went to the legal team, they were actually quite able to do that. So from a textual point of view, that's quite easy. I believe, and I think you know more about this, Paul, from a actual voice processing, it's also possible as well. It's just a matter of the processing issues.
Yeah, it depends on your overall approach, but like for instance, you can just take the particular utterances and things that are like common language terms for, like if I say affirmative, yes, agreed, these are all English language terms for the same thing. I'm agreeing to this statement. And there'll be similar local terms in other languages for the same kind of set of utterances. So you can train up utterances and train up intents in different languages, and that's all handleable. And then on the other side, you can get, I think, big transformer models that will automatically translate these things for you. The difference is how can you trust the translation model in what context? Now, for car rental and for airplane rental, the language can actually be fairly formal and fairly easy to translate, and you can have a high degree of trust that Google Translate could do it, never mind a nuance or another professional service one. So horses for courses, it's like what your use case is, how important it is, how many languages you need to deal with. They'll all kind of dictate what kind of approach you need to take to your internationalization.
Thank you. And thank you, Jose, for your question. Another question from Claude asks, can you run several million different product chatbots all from the same DB? I'm not 100% sure of Claude's intent in the question there, but I'm reading that as is like from the same like a model, the same language model. Can you run in different intents? Like you were just talking about the difference in maybe a car insurance type of conversation versus say an airline or something like that.
It's a great question. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say you certainly can do. If I'm understanding the question right, like you can do a multi-tenanted solution where you would say have airline questions, and then you'd have the airline questions running from the same DB for multiple airlines. But then the answers, each airline would be able to nuance its answers for it, and very much that's what Webio does as part of what we do with credit and collections. And you actually have the option where you can either have a shared language models where basically everyone's using the same set of training and feeding some data into that. Or sometimes what you want to do is you want to have some people on that, and then you want to have the ability to put other people onto a more sort of customized or unique language model. And a lot of that would depend on their business model, on their competitive landscape, on various factors like that as to what you want to do. But certainly the scaling of databases is interesting, and because when you get conversations, you can get really big databases really quickly, and that's where you start looking at sort of some of the NoSQL solutions, some of the other solutions for being able to actually hold that amount of data. Basically to hold that amount of data.
Okay, great.
I'd add a bit to that, and because there could be another flavor to that. We advertise products.
Yeah, a little clarification there from Claude.
Yeah, don't do that. Would be my advice, Claude. So it just means nothing's maintainable at scale. What the real kind of solution to that is to really think about how you basically bring product names and discovery of products conversationally into your chatbot. So you might be saying, like, I want to get a pair of Nike runners size 10.5 in blue. And they go, okay, so parse it on Nike, parse it on the size, parse it on the color, come back. And then it's like, then the choice architecture is if there's 100 responses, don't give them 100 sneakers, right? Give them 3. Like, here's the 3 sneakers, which one do you like? What styles prefer to you? And then you're discovering by product name, product category, product style, product area, and you start modeling that, and that makes it much, much easier to scale your solution and be successful ultimately. And that's where your database and your model has a lot to play in making sure that you have a custom model, that it's understood by like your product category, your catalog is like, you really want to get to that quickly. You don't want multiple tries to try and figure out what exact product they're looking for. The sooner you can get that, the better.
Great. Thank you for your questions, Claude. Let's change gears a little bit and talk about video. So we've talked about conversational chat in kind of a broad sense, and in most cases that implies text-based, like SMS or in a web browser. What about use cases where do you see a need or a role for video interactions in conversational AI? What use cases do you want to combine that with video for the live agent?
Well, we've seen this in Europe for a while, where for certain categories of products that are high value, you might want to have a conversation with a customer and an agent where the agent can help them with product choice. So I might be looking at the new iPhone 14 versus the new Samsung Galaxy, and I might be looking, how do I compare these? And I get an offer to speak to an agent. And what they've just found is that the conversion ratios are higher where there's an agent interaction, and they're higher again where there's a video and an agent interaction. So if you can even just see the agent, never mind the agent being able to see you, if you can just see the agent, it increases the trust that you have in the conversation and how real it is. So just in terms of injecting video conversations into a regular purchasing conversation, that's definitely one that's happened. And then cars, we know of another company in Europe that are opening up a chat, a video, and then walking you around an automobile and going, hey, this is me, I'm on the automobile, this is the one that we have in our display area, and this is what it looks like, and isn't it beautiful? Oh, the smell of the leather, right? And I'm basically selling you this car as I'm showing it around. And that's, like, again, being adopted by a lot of the car sellers. And I know that there's another, oh yes, the one that's easy to kind of overlook and it's massive is where you've got the live commerce. So you've got all these brands, direct to consumer brands. It could be over Instagram, it could be over TikTok, it could be over any of these channels. And I'm sitting there with my products and I'm going, hey, this is amazing. Look at me chopping the vegetables, or look at me putting on the makeup, or whatever it is. And then I'm just pressing, send it to me. I love this. I want to look like this, or whatever. And so there's so many, like, absolutely proven ways now that people are using just opening up the video channel to enable the customer interactions. The thing that they're not getting right now, and you'll see this, like, this is like so obvious it's going to happen, but that camera opened up is now your lens, right? It's the lens into that customer environment, and everything in that environment is going to be sensed. So, like, I don't know if you've seen some of the things going around about TikTok and the amount of things it's taking from your environment, the little measures. It's like, oh, there's a clock, there's a fridge, there's a TV, right? It's just able to sense everything in your environment, and then it'll make an assessment about you, or about what else you might need. And so, like, it might say, okay, look, I've got a couple of books in my background. Looks like I got a few. Oh, this is going to be, categorize. Show us where we live, and I'll show you a lot more about what you're interested in. And so that kind of just sensing the environment is definitely something that's going to be more and more of, and that's a huge privacy area, and it'll be a big no-no in Europe, and then everywhere else will go, oh, great, give it to me. America, till the cows come home. China already doing it. Africa doing it on Facebook Messenger. So that's going to happen all the time. I think the next kind of level is, given what we're sharing, which is audio, video, what can we tell from this? So, hey, you know what? I can tell from the cadence of this conversation. I can tell that Paul's head is a bit confused. Doesn't seem to be getting it. He's touching that. These are all gestures. These are all things that you can measure and go, hey, my confidence that Paul's going to buy this thing is just gone down 15, 20%. So I'm going to now prompt my agent or the person doing the display to just up it, like you're losing them, like a little orange light. Do something to just get them engaged again, because they're disengaging with your content. So what we're going to see is all the different environments where that same thing happens. Now, I don't know if you've been at a meeting where people are looking down, sketching on their books, and you go, oh, look, they're drawing a little man in a car, there's a little dog. I don't think they're paying a hell of a lot of attention to me, right? And you could be at a meeting and you're seeing the heads down, not the heads up. And so what's happening is your video is now tracking head motions, eye motions, who's looking at who's speaking for what amount of time, who's holding the room, who's not participating, and maybe we should be invited to participate. So it's not that, like when we talk about like the camera, it's not just having these conversations, being in video, which is great, but what's next? And then how do these gestures and how do these things inform conversations? I'm tending towards 99% they won't do a thing. And then 1% they'll go, oh, hold a second, there's a little alert here. And that's a significant thing. So I don't think we'll be walking around with streaming like subtitles and streaming, this guy's not paying attention and ding, 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 and do something funny. That's not going to be the way it is. But you might be the person running a web conference, and you might just get a little alert going, people are disengaging.
Right.
Oh, okay.
There's also really interesting sort of suite of AI tools that are sort of indirectly related to conversational, that could be both on video, on text analysis, and on just on voice. But that's where you do the sentiment analysis, you do various propensities. Is there a propensity that the person's fibbing based on certain reactions, certain eye movements, certain that type of thing. And so a lot of these as well, I could see, depending on the context, and there's some contexts like job interviews and various things like that, where it's conversational, but it's not sort of conversational what we've been talking about so far. It's other things, but that also could be used for example, if agents are having a conversation, do you want something that starts saying, and this is something that we've looked at a lot into, that if an agent is being provocative, is being inappropriate, is doing things that you don't want to do, you sort of want to be able to flag, especially in big call centers where you're having a high turnover. You want to be able to say, okay, actually, this agent's being quite shouty on the phone, or swearing a lot when they do messages or something like that, and then to be able to intervene before it becomes a problem. And for us, for credit and collections, this is a particularly sensitive area, because how you deal with things and dealing with things sensitively is very important.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, it made me think about the integrations of various AI services with video is incredibly interesting. We had a blog post one of our developers did of a couple of months ago of integrating tension detection into a video chat using TensorFlow. So exactly sort of thing you were talking about there. And then, also that kind of sensing the environment around me and what I might be interested based on what I've put on the bookshelf behind me is both interesting and creepy, right? Depending on the use case. So that also makes, one of the other things that is a frequent feature that our clients of building video applications look for is being able to do background removal and fake backgrounds and stuff in the video chat. So it kind of increases the value of that, right? It's not just about making sure that, my business colleagues don't maybe see a family member walking behind me in the house. It's also about, when I'm doing live commerce or something like that, or watching TikTok or what, not so much TikTok use case perhaps, but, that it's not sensing what's around me and making decisions based on that. So a lot of interesting implications there. Speaking of things that as we get close to the end of our conversation here, I don't want to forget about the elephant in the room. Speaking of things that have both interesting and maybe ethical considerations. And you said it earlier, Ben, ChatGPT, and large language models like that. Is that the future of conversational AI? What role does that play in conversational AI? How does it change customer service in general? What's your take,
Paul?
It's an interesting area, right? So I heard it said like this recently: you might as well put down what did the internet say, because
right?
That's what it is, right? So I'm reminded of like things it does well. Like I can say, here's a couple of lines. Can you put this into the style of Portuguese poet Pessoa, very obscure Portuguese poet? And it'll come back and it'll do a decent job. And you go, that's not particularly sensitive, right? But I can't put in when is my next balance due, or what's the best way for me to repay this bill, or should I contact the hospital if this thing happens? Mm-hmm. And I think the core of it is you're still just asking the internet, no matter how fancy you get. And what the internet doesn't have is a lot of like really accurate information. And
right,
when you get down to it, and I have a bit of a kind of intellectual problem with this next bit. So people are saying the real problem here is when you ask ChatGPT or another large language model, it gives you a very confident sounding response that seems right. Mm-hmm. And you kind of go, well, that seems right. And then you go, well, off I go with my opinion, right? When I ask Google like the same question, it gives me a list of things and a list of links and a list of sources. And therefore it gives me something that's obviously a choice. And I can pursue that choice or make these decisions and check these sources myself. So it comes with some aspect of here's a number of options, but no, the choice is yours, right? Mm-hmm. And my intellectual problem with that is it's not. Google does not give you choices, right? It gives you rankings and ratings, and it has authorities and hidden links and stuff in the background. So you have the appearance of choice as opposed to being given one choice. So there's bottom line truthiness, right? As John Oliver says on his Late Show, like how truthy does this seem? And I think the fundamental question that we have is these things seem really confident. They seem like they're giving you the right answer, but you've no real sense of how truthy they are.
Yeah.
And that's the core of the problem is how truthy it is. And the enterprise level, it does like, and they will solve for this. So directionally, this is the way it will go, but just not right now, which is what are my terms and conditions as a company? Like, can I return this thing? Can I claim this insurance? That data does not exist in the ChatGPT, but the technology will certainly start ingesting your like data sets and your knowledge bases. And then you'll have to have some interaction with your transactional information, like your flight time, or did you pay your bill, or that kind of information. So I think directionally, it will unlock a lot of things. But in the short term, we still need to understand how things work, particularly in Europe and in regulated industries. As you know, in the medical business, you've got to be able to track down every decision as to why everything was made, why every single trade-off was made, and be able to present that to anybody who wants to know. So in the short term, it's a breakthrough technology. There's no doubt about that. It's a breakthrough technology, but we got to be careful about how we use it and how it's put into the background of our products and powers particular things. And I think the shortcut to all of this is humans in the loop. Like if you want to generate text for a response, have a person look at it before you send it. Like don't automate that send, right? If you want to have an option generated and then see, does that make sense? Show it to the agent. They can look at it and go, that's absolutely what it is, and then send it on. So I think it'll be a huge tool. It's going to be really important. Everyone kind of gets the kind of magic of this stuff now. But again, we're back to, okay, we've had enough of the magic. How do we actually make this work for us? And I still think in our world, the best solutions are still well-engineered solutions. They're still well put together. They're well structured. They're well tested. You can go back, you can check things, you can roll out versions. It's old-fashioned good engineering. It still counts, and it's going to count for a while still.
Yeah, very good points. And yeah, I think watching out for the truthiness is definitely key. I just blogged on our site at WebRTC.Ventures about a conversation that I had with ChatGPT about what are the trends in WebRTC development, and there's definitely some truthiness in there. Some interesting responses. So if you're curious about that, check out our blog at WebRTC.Ventures, and you can comment about it on my LinkedIn post about it. All right, I want to wrap up with just one more question from our viewers. As I think this is interesting, an interesting observation, and maybe gets at a question of what more we can expect in terms of, let's say, empathy and engagement from conversational AI in the future. So Alberto says, I heard about this news where Dutch supermarkets were introducing unique slow checkout lines for lonely seniors who want to have a chat. And further, so I definitely agree that success of a conversational AI interaction is not always about the speed or containment. So, what other do you adapt based on other past client preferences? I'll kind of expand that too. Just talk about that sort of empathy and engagement and what you could see in the future of this.
There's sort of an interesting. A while ago, I was doing an AI-driven web chat widget. And one of the things that happened quite quickly with that was that it was so quick at responding that it actually seemed unnatural and weird, and it did. So we actually, as we user tested it, we found out that we had to put a bit of a delay in just to make it look more natural. But sort of aside from that, there's actually there's some work we've been doing and other people have been doing around asynchronous chat, which is quite interesting. And it's very much on a similar sort of thing. So it's deciding how you engage, sort of when you engage, and particularly when you get to a real practicality. I mean, there is the side of the empathy and how you engage with the customer, but there's also there's a practical element to doing conversational, which is, as Paul was saying, you have to have people on the end, but you also have to have people scheduled in the thing. And when you build a conversational software, one of the things that you have to spend a lot of time working out to do is when messages get sent, so that when it escalates to a conversation, there's someone who's there and actually able to, basically able to pick that up when that human element comes in. So I would say that less so for the let's have a slow conversation as the example there at the supermarket, but there's definitely the timing of messages and managing basically the volumes that a call center staff can take is a big bit of the subtleties of the engineering around conversational.
So my point on that is that empathetic AI is a category error. It can't actually be empathetic. It's not human, right? So it's a category error, and it can sense, because we're telling it in many ways how we're feeling. Like, I'm feeling sad. I guess that you feeling sad. I'm feeling not so great. I guess you're also kind of feeling a little sad. And we can have responses to that are like, not like your plane is still leaving. But
I'm sorry you're sad, but the plane is leaving. Run.
Still,
right. Like, no little tear from the plane for you. But you can come back and say something like, okay, this is someone expressing sadness at this point in the conversation. That's not normal. That's not normal flow. Treat it as something that's not normal in the flow, and escalate it to an agent, because there could be something else going on here that we need to know. Like, we don't know why. So the thing about the slow checkout is really jobs to be done. What's the job to be done that person's trying to get done? And they're trying to get an emotional job to be done. And an emotional job to be done is a different job. And there are specific companies out there looking to see how they can get that job to be done. So there's a company called Wobot, WOEBOT, and it's raised around $110 million to try and create this kind of relationship experience that you could get with an assistant, that you could tell it things, you can talk to it. it will probe you for like, why do you feel like that? Or does this happen to you all the time? Or does this happen to you at this time every day or week or month or whatever? And try and kind of get you to reflect and think about the patterns in your life. And it's trying to grow attachment. It's trying to grow that kind of sense of attachment so that you will talk to yourself more explicitly, so that it can be presented back to you explicitly. So what I would say is that when you're thinking about empathetic design and empathetic AI, you really are thinking about jobs to be done in a customer journey. And this is the emotional job. There's a psychological job. There's a functional job. And if you're doing good design, that should be driven out up front.
That's a great point. Great point. I like that. Yeah, think about that job to be done, and what I like the category error observation as well. We're over time, but if you have a moment, I have to bring on one more user comment, but we're gonna do a quick round here. I'm gonna ask you for this prediction. Is this 1 year away, 2 years away, 5 years away? And
5.
5. 5 is the answer. Okay. All right. Let's see it first here. Great question. Comment from Ram Kumar says augmented reality will blend with chatbots in coming years and with mobile apps. So customer support using AR and chatbots, is that an app possibility? So to me, yes, it's a possibility, but when? So 1 year, 2 year, 5 year?
No, straight away.
Straight away.
Straight away. There are no technical barriers to that happening at all. Once Apple Glasses launched, then you've got your first kind of major kind of provider of the tech. Snapchat can do it like in its sleep right now with the amount of tech it has in the background. I would not be surprised to see Instagram doing it on the back of Meta, and it's the importance it's put in the metaverse. There are no technical reasons why this can't happen straight away. In terms of widespread use, no, I don't see it as a huge widespread use. We've been able to do video chat in customer conversations over web chat for years. Why don't people have default to video chat? It's because they don't want it. Like they don't want to, they've got other things they want to do. They want to multitask. Their face isn't looking good. I've aged since this whole video started. I don't always want to see this, right? So I think it's entirely possible. I think it's a matter of finding the use case that it's doing a job that other people would not do. And I think those jobs would be pretty high end to start with.
Yeah.
So controversially, I disagree. I think we're about 5 years away. And I think that it's the price point that's holding us back. The processing power is really expensive. There's some, Microsoft have done some really cool AR goggles and different, you've got the Apple ones. They're all just eye-watering expensive. You look at Meta's new Quest that they've either released, I think they've released it now. And, it's getting over £1,000 a set.
So Ben, we're talking about the same thing, just different language on it.
But it's also the processing power to be able to do that sort of complex augmented reality with conversational all put in one. I think it'll just be, this is part of the problem that ChatGPT has, is it's out and it's cool, but they're burning through a lot of money to show how cool that is. And at some point, they have to scale it back to make it affordable to run.
I think it'll be there at launch. That's my prediction.
Yeah, so technically possible now to have a full AR chatbot customer service experience, but realistically, market-wise, a little further off.
No,
but on the way.
Well, I would say, sorry, maybe I answered the question incorrectly. I think it's entirely technical possible straight away, like out of the box, ready to go. Whether or not anyone uses it is an entirely, like before it goes, will it go mainstream or whatever? Right. I think it's very niche.
Yeah, makes sense. All right. Ron, thank you so much for your question, your comment there. Paul and Ben, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you for your time. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Thanks again, Paul. Thanks, Ben.
Well, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
All right. Cheers. Okay, so as always, this video will be available on the WebRTC Ventures YouTube channel, as well as on our blog at WebRTC.ventures. Our next episode will be February 15th. And February 15th, we are speaking with Sandra Gacci on WebRTC security. So make sure that you check that out. That will be very interesting. And then to find out more about our upcoming episodes, you can follow us on Twitter at WebRTC.ventures, on Twitch, LinkedIn, YouTube, and join our email list at WebRTC.ventures. To conclude today's episode, I'm going to share a short conversation that I had recently with Alan Quayle about TADHack Open, an event coming up in March and which is timed with the Enterprise Connect conference. Hope to see you there. All right, I'm here with my friend Alan Quayle from TADHack. Alan, you and I have worked together a number of times over the years, know each other's work well. I've been to a whole bunch of these TAD events. They're great events. Our team at WebRTC Ventures has participated in them a number of times and ways over the year. But for any of our viewers today who may not be familiar with TADHack, tell us a little bit about it.
Excellent. First of all, thank you, Aaron, for the invitation. Thank you for being a partner for TADHack Open. And let me give a little bit of information about what TADHack Open is all about. So it's on the 25th and 26th of March. That's the weekend before Enterprise Connect. Now, TADHack is a hackathon focused on programmable communication. So, of course, at WebRTC Ventures and all the work they do is directly relevant. And we've been running for about 10 years now. Now, what do we mean by open in TADHack Open? Well, since our founding in 2013, we've always stated TADHack is for everyone, and the diversity of people involved in TADHack has improved over that 10 years, but we can do more. So TADHack is working with groups committed to increasing the influence of women in building technologies that shape our future and change our world. So TADHack Open will help women, but not exclusively, demonstrate the vital contribution to programmable communications, not only in building skills in important new technologies, but also in demonstrating their abilities to industry leaders at the largest enterprise communications event on Monday, the 27th of March at Enterprise Connect in Orlando. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an overview of what we've got coming up, Aaron.
Wonderful. And I love the focus on increasing the visibility of women in tech. That's great. Thank you for doing that. Who can participate in these events? How do they sign up? What types of roles do the hackathon teams need?
Yep, absolutely. So the website isn't live yet. It will be by the end of the month. So I just go to tadhack.com and it will be there. Just wait till February to sign up. In terms of the skills you need, I've already mentioned TADHack is for everyone. So you don't need to be a coder. Of course it helps, and that will be your focus in the team. But you could be from the strategy, marketing, any aspect of a business, and you can join a team and help in terms of the presentation, in terms of the problem definition, because every team is judged on their pitch. That's 5 minutes, and it's all about the pitch. And the key is making the problem and the bit of the solution, your hack that you're demonstrating, compelling. And having a diverse team really helps. So we've always said, diversity is the key to success with TADHack.
All right. Thanks so much, Alan. So anyone who wants to participate, go to tadhack.com to learn more. I'll see you there myself, Alan. Thanks so much.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Aaron.
Thanks for joining us for WebRTC Live. Visit our website at WebRTC.ventures to learn more about our custom design and development services and to learn more about upcoming episodes of WebRTC Live.